The government didn't know what it was. The police didn't know how to control it. The kids ran it.
It was basically invisible, wasn't it?
It was
Unless
invisible.
you were part of it, and so many people were part of it.
My sort of entry into rave culture was, I come back from travelling and was a bit lost, didn't really have a house to go to, so I was sleeping on Liam's then girlfriend's sofa at the time, and one of her mates come round and was just telling me about rave parties and the Barn, which was a local club that we used to go to, you know, and just was talking about it with such enthusiasm and such passion that I thought I've got to be a part of this. Next Friday went down to the Barn, took some acid, took some ecstasy, and never looked back.
Prior to what we were involved in, there was acid house.
Yeah, very much
and
so.
It was kind of separate.
I used to have a friend called Seamus Cater. He worked up in London, and he come in and he had this paisley shirt on, all these beads. He had riding breeches and riding boots on. He goes, "Oh man, I've just been to this acid house party. We're drinking lemonade and just passing it around." And he was very much like a sort of an E-head from the early acid house, and that was almost quite an exclusive club then, to be quite honest. And then that was prior to me going travelling. Then I came back, and the sort of summer of love of the rave days had happened, and people were talking about, you know, sort of the M25 parties, and you know, and his sort of energy and biology and all of that. The offshoot from that was then going to things like, you know, telepathy, rain dance. You know, you never missed a rain dance. So then we had Vision, wasn't it?
Yeah, not my concept.
No.
Also not a bad concept. Again, it's execution.
Blade Runner. Now,
the Blade Runner stage set.
Yeah, from our point of view, we were really expecting huge things.
And me as well.
The hype was massive. Eh?
Blade Runner stage set.
Yeah, turbo rig, laser, something about, I mean, you know, so many kilowatt laser thing, and then you know, the usual suspects of DJs.
Yeah, everyone.
Lined up.
Yeah.
I mean, all I remember of that is it was very wet.
Incredibly wet. And incredibly muddy.
And incredibly muddy. And I remember going down the front of the stage, going over and just coming back up covered in mud.
Yeah.
And just did the rest of the gig there covered in mud. And that seems to be all I remember. I think it was just the build-up of having the Blade Runner set and then just having a few cars that kind of, it was a little bit oversold.
Yeah,
Underdelivered.
Underdelivered.
Can I say another thing about that as well, is that, do you remember the XL jackets?
Yeah.
With the leather sleeves?
Absolutely.
I remember when I got my XL jacket, I was like, I've made it.
Yeah.
That was the real, it was the real...
There were some muddy XL jackets after that event. For me, the big difference with when it sort of stopped being acid house. Acid house was quite trendy.
Yeah, it was. I think it was a bit more of an exclusive club,
wasn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it was very.
It was like the Face magazine.
Yeah, it was very underground.
Yeah.
And very,
Yeah.
you know, you had to know the right people to be at the right places. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it was started by a group of like, you know, I forget who the guy was. It. Who were the people that were...
Well, I guess Oakenfold was involved early on in all that, and there was an
Andy
Ibiza and Weatherall, and there was an Ibiza sort of component to it. So they were very much there. And also, I suppose I had a bit of a feeling, as the hardcore thing started happening, and we were doing that, I had a slight sense of those people sort of looking down on us.
Yeah.
Did you used to get that? Because they were more about like it was sort of seen as cooler. I think it was more in the face and stuff, and it was a bit more fashionable and.
Yeah, almost certainly more fashionable, and as you say, like the Face magazine, etc. But I think the really cool thing about coming from Essex was that you were talking about hip hop. That definitely the sound from Essex, as opposed to Manchester or that very clicky kind of London scene, it did have some sort of beats. You know, from hip hop, some hip hop tracks were starting to cross over into it, and I think that's what really sucked me in, was the fact that it had beats, and it wasn't just a 303 and a 4/4 or just a 303.
Yeah.
Not tonight, not tonight. Name's not down, you're not coming in.
I mean, there was a sort of a barrier that I had to get through, which was that there was people were torn who'd come from the hip hop background about it got morphing into rave. And
Yes.
there's definitely there was such a strong sellout thing in British hip hop.
Yes.
You basically were sell out if you did almost anything.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
if you made a record.
if you made a record virtually. So when because as soon as the rave thing started, it was like from the music making side, it was like everything just had more effect, and from the DJing side, everything had more effect.
Yes.
And people were taking notice in a way that they weren't really
Yeah.
when we were trying to make British hip hop. Prodigy was the best act to see at any of those raves, the most powerful act to see at any of those raves. But Prodigy is now the best act to see at any of these festivals.
Yeah,
which is quite so like a lot of stuff's moved around it.
I think that what we always wanted to achieve over and above selling records was having a great show.
Yeah.
And that is still to do with the rave aspect of, being a great PA at a party and actually bringing something to the party.
Yeah.
Sonically, visually, with the buzz and everything else.
Yeah.
That's totally what it's always been about.
Prodigy and XL had these, and I think continue to have these completely sort of mirror existences.
Yes.
Where Prodigy was one of the artists in this scene.
Yeah.
XL was one of the labels in this scene.
Yes.
But there was quite a bit of ambition on both sides.
Absolutely.
So we both went places beyond that scene.
Yes, yeah.
And did other things, but keeping the kind of ethics.
It was the ethics
of what that scene had.
But also it's funny. I think the word there is the ethics behind it. It's kind of using your hip hop roots. You don't sell out. You don't rubbish your thing.
Yeah.
You don't shit on your own doorstep.
Yeah.
But I think that it was the rave scene was very much about being real. It really was. That it was all about the buzz and which was drug driven. Without a doubt. But it was very much about being real and being very precious with the scene. Towards the end of the rave era, that the kind of took it down really was the money. People putting, certainly not you guys, that's for sure, but certainly after that, it was putting on the bill that certain DJs were there and they weren't, and charging too much for tickets. It was all about the guys selling the drugs were all there, ripping people off, and it was just all about a big exercise to rinse people of their money, really, and that's where the magic. That's when the magic left town. And maybe it's sort of what happens with any of these things. I mean, we were saying before how like this was. We wonder if people look at this time now, like we looked at the '60s, because it seems so magical
to us, but we don't
Yeah.
really know what it was like.
Well, I mean,
And-
you do see these programs about Woodstock, how it really was. You know, like, you know, everyone thinks, God, Woodstock was this big free thing, you know, but really people were sort of shitting in each other's sort of shoes, and you know. But I mean, there definitely was a sweet spot with that, with the rave scene that was special.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, was incredibly special, and you know, I think, you know, I really hope that with time, the times as they are now, and the amount of laws and the amount of, you know, sort of like public order offences and the amount of old bill that there is out there, and all, you know, sort of multimedia the way it is, that they can just crack down on things straight away. You know, I hope there's some other scenes bubbling along. I mean, of course there is. I'm not trying to rob some 17-year-old kid who's going out this weekend and going to what they consider to be the best club in the world.
Yeah.
I'm not robbing them of that.
Well, and it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's also a incredibly important parallel, though, with what we've all done, is that, you know, you can maintain the spirit of all this stuff and you take it on with you, and we're
Yes.
both doing plenty of things to this day,
Yes.
which we get a massive buzz out of.